Footprints in the desert, preserved in ash and mud for over 20,000 years. They belong to someone who walked through what is now New Mexico when glaciers covered half the continent. But here's the question. Who were they? And how did their ancestors get to a land that, according to conventional history, shouldn't have been inhabited for another 7,000 years? For nearly 70 years, archaeologists believed the Clovis culture held the answer. Around 13,000 years ago in what is now North America, a sophisticated hunting culture emerged with distinctive stone tools. For decades, scholars assumed Clovis was first, the earliest wave of human settlement in the entire Western Hemisphere. Everything else, they thought, came after. But starting in the 1980s and accelerating in recent years, archaeologists began uncovering sites that didn't fit the Clovis timeline. Monte Verde in southern Chile showed evidence of human settlement around 14,500 years ago. Meadowcroft Rock Shelter in Pennsylvania suggested occupation going back 16,000 years. And then in 2021, researchers published findings from White Sands National Park. Human footprints dated to approximately 23,000 years ago. During the last glacial maximum, when vast ice sheets locked up so much ocean water that sea levels were hundreds of feet lower than today. The White Sands discovery is particularly compelling because it uses multiple independent dating methods, not just one. Researchers examined charred seeds and pollen buried with the footprints and dated them through radiocarbon analysis. They also used optically stimulated luminescence, which measures when mineral grains were last exposed to sunlight. Both techniques converged on the same time frame, approximately 23,000 years ago. That's solid, cross-verified science. The Smithsonian Institution and the journal Nature both recognize these findings as credible evidence of human presence in North America thousands of years before Clovis. Now, skeptics raise fair questions. The archaeology community isn't unanimous. Bluefish Caves in Yukon Territory, Canada, has yielded bone fragments, possibly modified by human hands, that some researchers date to 24,000 years ago. But others argue the bone damage could be natural, from scavenging or geological pressure, not human hunting. Meadowcroft's dates have been questioned because radiocarbon contamination from coal dust in the rock shelter soil could skew results older than they actually are. So the scientific mainstream accepts Monte Verde and White Sands as convincing, but remains more cautious about the most extreme claims. But even accepting the conservative timeline, Monte Verde at 14,500 years ago, the implication is revolutionary. If people were in South America by then, they had to arrive in North America earlier. Genetic analysis of ancient and modern Native American DNA points to the earliest divergence from Asian ancestors occurring somewhere between 15,000 and 23,000 years ago. And the leading theory for how they got here isn't the old land bridge alone. Yes, Beringia, the exposed landmass connecting Siberia and Alaska during lower sea levels, was passable. But many researchers now argue that seafaring coastal peoples traveled along Pacific shorelines, island hopping south. These weren't primitive wanderers. They were navigators, adapted to maritime life, deliberately colonizing a new world. The truth is, we're still discovering who the first Americans really were. New dating technologies, underwater archaeology along submerged ancient coastlines, and ancient DNA analysis keep reshaping the picture. But one thing is certain, the Clovis first model is dead. Some historians and archaeologists now argue that the earliest Americans arrived not 13,000 years ago, but possibly 20,000 years or more before present, sophisticated enough to navigate Ice Age climates and establish settlements across two continents before agriculture even existed. These were the true pioneers of human expansion, yet their story has only recently begun to emerge from the sediment. If the first Americans arrived during the Ice Age as skilled navigators and adaptable hunters, what other foundational stories about human settlement might we have wrong? Drop a comment. What aspect of early American archaeology intrigues you most? And if you're hungry for more forgotten chapters of human history, subscribe to Time Excavated.